Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Backbench Business Committee this afternoon. First thing to say is that the chairman of the committee, unfortunately, one of his relatives is very seriously ill and he's been called away to attend upon her with his family. So he's asked me to chair the committee in his absence. So the first application we've got is from Yasmin Qureshi on the All-Party Parliamentary Group on hormone pregnancy tests. So, Yasmin, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues, for hearing our application this afternoon. As I think some of you know, this is probably not the first time I've been here asking for a debate on hormone pregnancy tests, but I'm hoping that it may be the last time. Let me begin by summarising the key issues for those colleagues who may not be aware of the background to this campaign. Primidose was a pregnancy test pill that was given to women in the 1960s and 70s. It was the equivalent of 40 morning after pills today. We believe it caused babies to be born with severe deformities, while some mothers miscarried or had stillbirths. These babies are now adults in their 40s and 50s, living with lifelong disabilities and being looked after by their elderly parents. In Parliament, we began this campaign in 2012. It was very well attended Backbench Business debate in 2014 that forced the Minister to rethink its approach, and the government finally agreed to set up an independent expert working group to review all the scientific evidence. But by the time the group published its report in 2017, it was clear it had not been independent at all, and we have a lot of evidence to prove this. A team of scientists at Oxford University then found that the correct processes to review the evidence had not been followed. The terms of reference had stated that they were looking for a possible association, but the review ended up concluding that there was no causal link, which is not what they'd been asked to do. And in fact, it's not even possible to prove a causal link because, like thalidomide, you would have to test the drug on pregnant women, and that's not going to happen. But since 2017, the government has been using this expert working group report to defend its position, i.e. that there's no link between Primidose and the deformities. We continued our campaign, and eventually 2019, the then Prime Minister Theresa May knew something was fishy about the expert working group report and that it did not make sense, so she commissioned the Cambridge Review, which was a review of all the historical evidence for Primidose and also for vaginal mesh and the sodium valproate. The review by Baroness Cambridge found that Primidose had caused avoidable harm and that the families needed to be given redress, and the Health Secretary of State at the time, Ms. Hancock, actually apologised on the television screen for what had happened years ago. But instead of doing that, the Patient Safety Commissioner, who was asked by the government to do a review into how to redress scheme that would work for MASH and valproate victims, and she was asked to exclude the Primidose families. Why? Because they keep hiding behind the expert working group report. Why do we want this debate? At our last debate in September, the Minister expressly stated that she would be open to reviewing new evidence. And we've had a meeting with her since then, and she has said the same. The APPG has now published a report which very clearly sets out the new scientific evidence as well, which proved there is a link between Primidose and deformities. And the report also dismantled the expert working group report, which the government continues to hide behind. The report asked the government to review the new evidence. It asked for the review of expert working group report by providing pages and pages of evidence on why it is problematic. This debate cannot wait. Why? Again, because 22 people affected by Primidose have died since the Cambridge Review found that Primidose had caused avoidable harm. For some reason, the government is refusing to respond to this report. it is refusing to respond to this new evidence because it is hoping, I think, that the issue will go away. The APPG is one of the largest APPGs in Parliament. It has 133 members, and most of those are members who have families in their constituencies, and that's why all our debates are always very well attended. But the families we represent do not have luxury of time anymore. Time is running out for many of them. And we're asking for a debate in the main chamber after the local elections when more of our APPG members will be available. The last debate we had was attended by the former Prime Minister Theresa May, who has become a big supporter of our campaign, and Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and several other senior colleagues. And I think the reason so many of our senior colleagues take time out of their Thursday afternoons is because they know that the only way the government is going to move a dial on this issue is through these debates. We see what is happening with the contaminated blood campaign. We see what happened with the Post Office Horizon scandal. This is no different, which is why we find ourselves here again, asking all of you to give us some chamber time before the general election in the hope that we can convince the government to finally do the right thing. And, just to make it very clear, this is not a party political issue. All successive governments in the 60s and 70s have not dealt with this issue or grappled with it. And that's why we have so many members who are actively involved in it. We think this is a real case of, one of the biggest, in my opinion, legal medical fraud, I think, of the last century. And so many people have been affected by it. You, the committee, have always been very kind. On all occasions when I've come before you, you've always kindly granted our application, and I hope that you may be able to do so this time as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. Before I open it to the floor to other questions, two things I just would like to just look at. First is, you've said that the government have failed to respond to the report of the all-party group. Could I suggest you might want to reword this suggested motion here to call on the government to, so that would then move it to a position whereby there would be a divisible motion and would prioritise the debate for the chamber from our purposes.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
And then the second thing is, although you mentioned having a debate after the local elections, our first available slot is Thursday the 25th of April, first item on, which would be available to you if you desire it, as you're first on the list of our applicants today. Would you take the 25th of April if it's offered? Obviously,
if that is the date that the committee can give, I will take it, because obviously we want the matter debated. The only reason we're asking after the May election is because we know many colleagues will be in their constituencies on Thursday, and so we probably won't have enough people. And I think what we need to do, as previous debates have shown, that when we've had all of the MPs turning up, and the good thing is every single time we've asked for debate, the full time allocated has been used up. Not a single space no minute is wasted.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think Kevin, you.
Yeah, I think very similar to my point was very similar to your own chair about, particularly looking at prioritisation for chamber time, of having a motion that says something, i.e. this House approves the recommendations of the report rather than just has considered them.
Great, thank you.
I was just going to follow up on the point that you said, and I know that this is true because I've participated in one, I think, in the past, that they're very well attended. They are very well attended, which is why I'm curious with your huge interest on your application. You've only asked for half a day. That's what, 2 hours, 90 minutes?
3 hours.
3 hours.
And it all gets squeezed because of queues and statements.
I'm just...
I think 3 hours, half a day. So,
given the queue on and the queue on the chamber, then 3 hours will be the maximum you would get, I think, to be fair, from this committee. Chris.
Thank you. Yasmin, thank you for your championing the cause over recent years. You've done a comprehensive introduction verbally and by paper, but one thing I was wondering, does this topic, does it touch on concerns of the performance of the MHRA as well, the Medicines Healthcare Products
Yeah.
Regulatory Agency. So that's going to be an aspect that will be scrutinised in this debate as well, and one of the key areas.
That's right. It was the MHRA who set up the expert working group, and we have, to be honest, very critical of them as well and their role in this whole thing because they didn't work properly. I mean, one of the things they did, one of our campaigners, Marie Lyon, she was allowed to come and sit on the expert working group, but then she was told that she must be gagged, she can't say anything about it, she can't discuss it, and if she did, she'd face imprisonment. I mean, their whole tactics was absolutely disgraceful. And I've said it publicly, the MHRA, have been horrendous. And it's sad because it smacks me of when this was first raised in the 60s and the 70s, that then it was a body called the Committee on Safety of Medicine, similar to MHRA, they ignored it as well. And one of the things we've argued is that Dr. Inman, who's one of the persons who was chair of that committee, actively tried to hide the evidence and actually was working with, believe it or not, the manufacturers of the drug. And so, it's like, I'm not saying MHR are doing the same, but it's almost, I don't know why it is, right, that officials get so hung up on these things. These are issues affecting people. Nobody's blaming anyone. We're just saying, please give us justice.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, Yasmin. And obviously the clerks will be in touch with you to confirm Thursday, the 25th of April.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Sally Ann Hart and Peter Gibson. So, I'm guessing that Sally's not available.
He's unfortunately detained.
So the next application is on hospice funding.
Thank you,
Peter.
Mr. Blackman, and I'm sorry to not see the chair in his place. Please do pass my regards to him. The committee will know that I am co-chair of the APPG for hospices and end-of-life care, and as well as that, I have also served as a hospice trustee myself for over a decade. The APPG has recently produced a report on government funding for hospices, and that was brought about by two things. The first being the statutory obligation to commission palliative care contained in the Health and Social Care Act, the first time that there has ever been such a statutory obligation. And secondly, the worrying signs throughout the hospice sector post-COVID when phenomenal support was provided by the government, which is now translating into severe financial difficulties for many hospices. The picture that emerges is one of complete disparity across the country, some hospices getting substantial funding and others getting very little. It is also very clear that there is little consistency of how our ICBs are responding across the country. For these reasons, and to give members across the country the opportunity to highlight the specific issues to their hospices, highlight their good work and their ongoing challenges, a debate on the floor of the House would be of great support to the hospice sector throughout the country and secure a firm response from the government on these issues. Those of us who have been touched by hospices can be in no doubt as to their importance in our communities, providing that crucial support not just to the dying but to the bereaved at a most precious time. My application was supported by a range of parliamentarians, and every member I approached wanted to support and was keen to attend. In the past, multiple Westminster Hall and adjournment debates on hospices have previously been held, and I believe that the scale of these issues affecting hospices right across the country warrants a debate on the floor of the House. Thank you.
In terms of a debate in the chamber, obviously it would help your case if you had a divisible motion, which might be along the lines of this House calls on the government to end the postcode lottery of funding for hospices.
I will be happily led by the committee. This is my first appearance before the Backbench Business Committee, so I am happy to accept that advice.
It's a well-supported application in terms of numbers. Obviously, there's a bit of an issue around the chamber time. Would you be able to do Thursday, the 2nd of May, which is the local election day? That would be the first available slot, by the way.
think my preference, in order to be able to give members the opportunity to be here, I think we can all anticipate that the 2nd of May would be a very poorly attended day in Parliament. And whilst I'd be very grateful to have the debate, I don't think it would secure the attendance that the issue deserves, with it being polling day for the local elections.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Questions, colleagues? Any questions?
No, thanks.
No.
It's a good application. Thank you very much. The clerks will be in touch about a potential date.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Next application is coming forward is Alistair Carmichael on the currently titled Regulation of Defined Benefit Pensions. But just explain, Alistair, we're a bit concerned that you may need to reword the title as you've had a Westminster Hall debate on the subject recently.
I'm sure we can find a form of words that covers the same subject matter. Administration of defined benefit.
We'll leave negotiation between
you. Surely. Okay, we can find that. And also, just while we're on the subject of the application, for reasons that might have made sense to me at some point, but I can't for the life of me think why I did it now. I seem to have asked for time in the chamber. I'll take time wherever I can get it in respect of this. But the issue here is one that I've had a 30-minute adjournment debate already on. It's Westminster Hall debate. And there were a number of people who attended that, including Justin Madders, who felt he couldn't put his name to an application because he's a shadow minister, but would be very keen to take part in the debate. So, I would be reasonably confident that in the right circumstances we would be able to get the 15 or more, notwithstanding the fact I've only got 14 on the application. The issue is one of growing importance. I first became aware of this because I have a lot of BP pensioners in my constituency because they administered the Silombo oil terminal for many years. Once I started talking about it, I started getting people in touch with me saying, actually, Shell are doing the same thing. And now I hear that KPMG is doing the same thing. The Select Committee actually is doing an investigation on this. And I understand it's possible that we might even see something in the not too distant future coming out from them. The issue here is that the terms of most of these defined benefit pensions say that when inflation goes above 5%, the automaticity of increase falls away, and it is thereafter a discretionary increase. So when inflation was 11%, the trustees of the BP pension said, we're not giving you that, but then the next year they recommended that it should be given. So, you've got 2 years where this has been an issue for the BP pensioners. But in fact, then the recommendation from the trustees was turned down from the board of BP themselves. So, there is an issue around the way in which these pensions are administered and the way in which they're regulated. This is going to be an issue that will only become more common. It will become more frequent. Those who are in defined benefit schemes, and I declare an interest here, up until 2011, the Parliamentary Contribution Pension Fund was a defined benefit scheme, at which point we moved to being a career average scheme. People who are in that position generally thought that they were set pretty well in the future for a secure time. Now they're finding that they're not. In blatant contradiction to some of the material that was distributed by the employers at the point when they were being encouraged to pay into these funds. So these are the issues that we wish to ventilate, and as I say, it's a significant issue and a growing one, and I would expect there to be significant interest in it, which is why I think it really does need more than the half hour I could get out of the Speaker in Westminster Hall.
Can I just check with you? You haven't ticked for a Tuesday, I don't think.
We take a Tuesday, happily.
Presumably, it would be work and pensions who would answer.
It would be work and pensions.
Okay, so we haven't been given the rota yet for
Yeah.
the weeks coming forward. But there would be a potential on either the 30th or the 7th of May.
30th of April or 7th of May?
30th of April,
Yeah.
or the 7th of May. If it's a Tuesday, which would be the fastest time probably, or alternatively, you could potentially have time in the chamber on the 2nd of May, which
I was
is
listening
going
to
be
that.
very popular.
It might require that some of us would have to orate at greater length than would otherwise. Look, I know it's election day in England, and that there are police and crime commissioners and London Mayor and the rest of it. We have a mix of people from different parts of the country here. There are big chunks of the country that don't have local elections. And while, look, somebody's got to fill the time on polling day.
Very kindly offer your services.
If we were to take the hit for the team in this one, I would expect the committee to remember this on some future occasion.
Any other questions from colleagues? No? Well, it's a good application. Thank you very much.
My apologies for having missed the committee last week.
That's understandable.
Just one of those days that suddenly things happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next application is from Sir William Cash on the BBC Midterm Charter Review. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm most grateful for the opportunity to appear in front of this committee for this application. I've asked for a full 3-hour debate because of the importance of the matter and because the government announced the BBC Midterm Charter Review by a mere written ministerial statement and not even an oral statement on the floor of the House. As you will see, my application is supported across the floor of the House and by many more MPs. In fact, I'm rather intrigued by the degree of support that I've been getting in the tea room and other places such as that. They include 2 former chairmen of the DCMS committee, the present DCMS committee chair herself, and members of the current DCMS committee, including Labour. Also, the current chairman of the BBC APPG, who is the father of the House, and the former chairman of the BBC APPG, and the former Secretary of State of DCMS. My application is made because of the importance of the BBC to our national life and the Midterm Charter Review and the Charter itself. It was at my instigation, I hope I don't sound too presumptuous, that the BBC Charter in 2015 was radically revised by the new insertion of Purpose 1 of the new Charter, which is, quote, due impartiality, close quote, granted in that year. This impartiality requirement is at the centre of gravity of the Midterm Charter Review and was inserted after intense debate and discussion between the government, the BBC and Ofcom, but not in Parliament. This requirement of impartiality led to a new internal system for adjudication of matters of impartiality. This new system has not been discussed in the House at all, and this debate will be a vital opportunity for a full debate and discussion across the floor of the House, in which every Member of Parliament who participates will be conscious of the importance of these matters to the licence fee payer and also the national interest. It will also be of profound interest as to issues of impartiality, for example, which have arisen over the Hamas-Israel war and the issues which have permeated the media on all sides regarding highly paid celebrities, commentators and others who are paid by the BBC but who use their profile on social media to disseminate their views to millions of their followers. On the question of the numbers, I would like to refer to some figures from the past 5 years on the complaints made by the licence fee payers. That is taxpayers, of course, 90% of whom pay for the BBC. According to the figures, there were 1,935,179, nearly 2 million in other words, audience complaints to the BBC from 2017 to 2023, of which only 3,692 progressed to the BBC Executive Complaints Unit, which is the only element within the BBC complaints framework which is able to provide any reasoned form of analysis of complaints. Only 147 of those 2 million were upheld or partially upheld by that unit, and only 4 of the 1,067 escalated to Ofcom, were decided to be BBC breaches of the broadcasting code. So it goes from 2 million complaints to 4 breaches upheld by Ofcom. Since the start of the current charter period in 2017, the current unit has upheld or partially upheld cases in a mere 29 instances out of a total of 147, in which it found that the appropriate standard of due impartiality had not been applied. I know that members of the committee, as members of Parliament, will be aware of the importance of this subject in the national interest. I know from feedback that many MPs believe very strongly that the midterm charter review and the new system that is being put in place inside the BBC does require full and proper debate, not only about BBC impartiality, but also about the system inside the BBC, the role of Ofcom, and also the issue of the licence fee itself. It is noteworthy that in the midterm and charter review report from the government, the BBC was expressly and notably criticised for its significant failures of impartiality compliance. My presentation today cannot cover all the areas of the BBC Charter which are of interest, but I do believe from feedback that members of Parliament as a whole will want to debate all these issues properly, and that a full 3-hour debate will be welcome. I would be very happy to answer any questions, of course. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill, for that presentation, and also for the application, which clearly meets our basic requirements. Just one thing on the application. You've ticked a full day, which for us would be a 6-hour debate. Now, in your presentation, you've said a half day.
Well, 3 hours I think would be adequate.
Fine, good, okay.
Yeah.
In which case, if we offered you Thursday the 9th of May in the Chamber, would that be acceptable?
That would be very acceptable, and it would be the day before my 84th birthday.
Hey.
And it would also be a commemoration of the Norway debate,
Yes.
which I won't go into.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Right, any questions from colleagues? No?
No, it's a good application.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. The clerks will be in touch, but the offer is obviously going to be made for the 9th of May.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm most grateful.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Right.
Right, the final application comes from a member of the committee, Kevin Foster, on ratification of the Global Ocean Treaty.
Yes, time for the hard.
So I make clear to all of our viewers, of course, that Kevin is a member of the committee. He will take no part in the decision-making on his application. Kevin, over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present my application. And as headlined, it's an application for a debate on the ratification of the Global Ocean Treaty, which is one of the most significant agreements reached in relation to protecting our marine environment in some decades. It will basically transform the regulation system, and very much in reaction to the fact that when the current framework internationally was put together in the early 80s, the idea you could mine the bottom of the ocean would have sounded like something you'd have seen in Thunderbirds rather than a reality. But it is now becoming increasingly possible to reach depths that would have been unimaginable before, to actually operate at. So this treaty has been signed. The UK government's been one of the ones leading on it, it has to be said, to be fair, with cross-party support. This is not an area where there's a particular disagreement. And the core now is, having signed it, to get it actually into force, is to have 60 countries ratify it. And I'm very keen that, of course, the sooner the UK gets on and ratifies, the better. So I was keen to have a debate, particularly because we're going to tease out from the government exactly what work needs to be done to ratify. In another context, we've had allusions to needing to change certain standards or policies. this is what I really want to bring out, and perhaps get some firm government commitments, and also actually, of course, from the opposition as well, given we are close to a general election, about what the timescale for ratification they would see, particularly making sure that we are in that first 60, because the sooner we hit the first 60, the sooner this treaty comes into effect internationally. And for clarity, it doesn't affect within coastal waters. So this isn't a treaty. This isn't something about what happens just off our coast. This is about what happens on what we call the international commons, the high sea.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Just two quick issues. One is you've ticked Tuesday and Thursday, I think, for Westminster Hall.
Yep.
Obviously, we'll have to consider whether it's a Tuesday or a Thursday opportunity. If it's a Tuesday, obviously, it's got to be the answering department of the day. Which answering department do you expect for this particular debate?
Probably a mixture, but it could actually end up being the FCDO of all people, because they lead on treaty ratification. It's Minister Benyon who I understand is leading for the government. It could also be DEFRA as well, depending on which angle they want to go around. But my understanding is it probably ends up being FCDO, given, as I say, we're not talking about any area of our territorial waters. This would apply to the high seas.
Okay. So if we offered you Thursday in Westminster Hall, which would be the 25th of April, would that be acceptable?
It would very much be acceptable, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, yes?
Just one quick question, and I appreciate you said that there's cross-party support and that is demonstrated in the application, but just in terms of balance of names, you have 3 Conservatives, would normally be looking for 4. Can I just ask, have you got any additional names?
Well, I can add.
I've got 3 on my 3 Conservatives.
May have been updated. I've got Anthony Magnell.
That
Can
makes
definitely
it 4.
be added to the list.
Yeah.
That,
Kevin has proposed.
Well, yes.
and there's obviously me as the proposer. But no, it's a fair point. Actually, I'm quite pleased to, in the end, the demonstration of the cross-party support there is. There's members from the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party, the SNP, and my own party are supporting the application.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Kevin. Well, the clerks will be in touch. That brings the end of our formal business to a close. The committee will now go into closed session to consider these particular applications. Order.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.